Hi, fourth grade. This is the video for week 4, day 4. So our learning target says, I can decompose unit fractions and fractions using area models to show equivalence. So for our daily warm-up, we're going to start from 0/4, and it says count up by 4/4, count up to 4/4 by 1/4. Okay, so we're going to start by 0/4, which is what they did first. Okay, so we know that what comes next is 1/4. So we have 1/4, and then 2/4, and then 3/4, and finally 4/4. Okay, so it says 4/4 is the same as 1 of what unit? So we know that 4/4 is the same as 1 whole, or 1/1. Okay. Okay, so now it says count by 4/4 again. This time say 1 when you arrive at 4/4. Start at 0. So we have 0, 0/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then 1 whole. Okay, now we're going to count by halves to 4 halves. So we have 0 halves, we have 1 half, we have 2 halves, we have 3 halves, and we have 4 halves. The next question says, how many halves are equal to 1? So we know that 2 halves is the same as 1 whole. Okay, now how many halves are equal to 2? Well, we know that 2 halves is 1, so 3 halves is 1 and 1/2, and 4 halves is going to be 2. So therefore, how many halves are equal to 2? There are 4 halves equal to 2. Okay? Okay, so now we're on the next page, which is our new learning page. So it wants us to draw horizontal lines to decompose the rectangle into 2 rows. Then we're going to use the model to name the shaded area as both a sum of unit fractions and a multiplication sentence. Okay, so basically what we did yesterday, or on the last video, was we made equivalent fractions and we used tape diagrams. So this time we're doing the same thing, but we're going to be using area models. Okay, so I'm going to kind of draw it off out to the side for you so that you can see how it's done, because they kind of did the whole thing here, which can be hard to see. So they took an area model, okay, and they said, okay, first they showed 1/3, okay, so they said, I'm going to take this area model and I'm going to divide it into 3 equal pieces using vertical lines. Vertical means up and down, okay, and I'm going to shade in 1/3, right? This shows 1/3. Then they said, okay, I want to make an equivalent fraction, so I'm going to make this have 2 rows, not 2 lines, 2 rows. So to do that, I'm going to split it in half. And when I split it in half like this, now I have 1 row and 2 rows, okay? So now I made an equivalent fraction. What equivalent fraction did I make here? Well, now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total pieces. And I can see that there are 2 pieces shaded in. So that gives me an equivalent fraction of 2/6. So this means what they wrote right here. This means that 1/3 is equal to 2/6. You can also say that 1/3 is equal to 1/6 plus 1/6, which is also means 1/3 is equal to 2 copies of 1/6. Okay, so you have your equivalent fraction here, then you have your addition of unit fractions here, and then you have your multiplication sentence here. So again, it's the same thing that we've done the last couple of days. The only difference is that we're using a different model. Okay, and then that's just another example down here. So instead of making, they started with 2 rows here because it was 1/2, and then they showed 2/4. Then here they showed 1/2 as 6/12. And this way they made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. So you can do it with any number of rows, just like when we did the tape diagrams, you could draw as many lines as you want. Okay, so we'll go to the next page. And this is more basically of the same thing. So here it all looks very confusing, but really all it did was break up the unit fractions. So it said, okay, this is 4/6, and it's also equal to 8/12. So here all they did was say 4/6, 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 is the same as 2, 4, 6, 8/12. They just used parentheses to group them together. Okay, so you don't need to worry about this page. It's kind of just a very confusing way to explain what they were trying to show you. So we're just going to go ahead and skip to the next page. Okay, so now we're on the let's try section. So it says draw horizontal lines to decompose each rectangle into the number of rows indicated. So it's going to tell you how many rows they want. Okay, then use the model to show the equivalent fraction. So here they said, okay, we're going to split this into 2 rows. So they did that, right? The fraction they had first was 1/4, and we know that because they wrote it here. So this was 1/4 up here. Okay, then they said, okay, well now I'm going to split it into 2 rows to make an equivalent fraction. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces total, and there are 2 shaded in. Okay, so this is showing me that 1/4 is equivalent to 2/8. I'm going to write an 8 over here. Then it says 1/4 is equal to 1/8 plus blank equals blank. So again, that's where you're just writing the sum of unit fractions. So 1/4 is equal to 1/8 plus 1/8, which equals 2/8. Okay. Then it says 1/4 is equal to 2 times blank equals blank. So you need to think, okay, how many copies of 1/8 did they have? They had 2 copies of 1/8, and you're still going to get 2/8 in the end. So it's still equivalent fractions. Okay, so scrolling down. All right, they made it a little more confusing looking with the parentheses, but don't stress, it's really not any different. So again, they said they started with thirds, right? Because I can see that's the first fraction up here. So they said, okay, first they drew a model and they drew 2/3, okay? So they had 2/3 first, just like this. Then they said, okay, I want to make an equivalent fraction. So it says I need to split this up and make sixths. So I need to have 6 total pieces. So I'm going to draw one horizontal line, and now I have 6 total pieces. And now I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces shaded in. Okay, so that means that 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. So now it just gave you some different numerators to fill in. So blank third plus blank third. Okay, so if we have 2/3, I know that that's 1/3 plus 1/3 is equal to 4/6. So 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 equals 4/6. Okay, then it says 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 is equal to 2 copies. So it's saying here there are 2 copies of 1/6 plus 2 more copies of 1/6. And that still gives you 4/6. So 2/3 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4 copies of 1/6, which gives you 4/6. Okay? Don't let the parentheses confuse you. All right, moving on to the next page. So now this is the problem set, and I think it's actually easier to understand when you don't have to fill in all the little things and you get to do it at your own pace and, draw it out yourself, because that helps me. So it says draw a horizontal line, so we're doing the same thing. So once again, we're going to start, it gave us some of the information. So the first fraction they started with is right here. So they said, okay, I'm going to split this in half and shade in 1/2 of it. Okay, so this fraction is 1/2. Okay, then it said I need to make 3 rows. So they said, okay, I'm going to draw a line, and I have 1 row right here. Now I'm going to draw another line, and now I have 2 rows and 3 rows. Okay, so now I can see that I have 1, 2, 3 out of 6 total pieces shaded in. So that's the same as 3/6. So 1/2 is the same as 3/6. All right. So then below it says 1/2 equals 1/6, and I know I'm going to say plus 1/6 plus 1/6 gives me 3/6. And then that's equal to 1/2 is equal to 3 copies of 1/6. Okay? That's it. All right, so now we are going to actually draw the area model and show the decomposition. Okay, so now we're going to do all the work. So I can see that the first fraction is 4/5. So go ahead and draw an area model and represent 4/5 using vertical or up and down lines. Oops, that did not work. Okay. All right, there's my area model. Okay, and I'm going to show 4/5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to shade it. Okay, and this shows 4/5 right here. All right, so your area model should look like mine. Now I need to make this show 8/10. So I need to use horizontal lines to make 10 total pieces. Right now I have 5. So if I have 5, then I know if I make one line down the middle, now I have 10 total pieces. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 10 pieces shaded in, just like they wanted. So now we're saying 4/5 is equal to 8/10. So we can write that as unit fractions, right? We could say 4/5 is equal to, and then we could do 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10. That's 4. All right, and then 8 times. So 6, 7, 8. 4/5 is equal to 1/10 8 times. So I know that I can also write 4/5 is equal to 8 copies of 1/10, and that's still going to give me 8/10. Okay? All right, moving on to our next page. Now we're going to do the same thing. So draw area models to show the decompositions. All right, so we're going to start with an area model again. Okay, and first you're going to show 2/3 on this area model. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Okay. I'm going to shade in 1, 2. All right, and that shows 2/3. Okay, now I need to make it have 6 pieces when I draw horizontal lines because the denominator on the equivalent fraction is 6. So if I split this in half, now I have 2 rows and I have 6 total pieces. So now I can see that this is the same as 1, 2, 3, 4 total pieces. 4 pieces shaded in out of 6 total pieces. right? So now I'm going to write this as a sum of unit fractions. So I'm going to say 2/3 is equal to 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6. Okay? And that is the same as saying 2/3 is equal to 4 copies of 1/6, which is equal to 4/6. Okay? All right, on the bottom, or on the next one, it says 4/5 equals 8/10. So again, I want you to start with an area model. This one's going to be a little hard to move. We'll do it here. Actually, okay. It's a little hard to find space. So now you're going to make this show 4/5 to begin with, because that's our first fraction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I'm going to shade in 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now my area model shows 4/5. Okay. Now I need to make it show tenths because 10 is my denominator in my equivalent fraction. So if I divide this in half, now I have 10 total pieces, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total pieces. So now this shows 8/10, which I'm going to try and write down here because I'm out of room. All right. So now you can write this as a sum of unit fractions, which I'm not going to have room to do, but you know how to do that. 4/5 equals 1/10 plus 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 1/10. Okay? And then you can also write your multiplication sentence. So I'm going to say, okay, 4/5 is equal to, well, how many copies of tenths do I have now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 copies of 1/10. And that still gives me 8/10. Okay. Now, on this next problem, you have a little more freedom on what you would like to do. I'm going to erase this so that it doesn't get in the way. So it says, step 1, draw an area model for a fraction with units of thirds, fourths, or fifths. So you can pick, okay? Then you have to shade in more than one fractional unit, right? So you have to have 2/3 or 2/4 or 2/5. You have to have at least 2, so there has to be more than one. Or 3/3, 3/4, 3/5. And then it wants you to find the equivalent fraction. So I'm going to give an example, and you can try to find as many examples as you would like. All right, so I'm going to start with an area model. And I'm actually going to pick the fraction. I'm going to do, I'm going to do 2/3. Okay. So I'm going to show 2/3 here by dividing this into 3 equal pieces and shading in 2. And again, this is just an example. There are a lot of other ways that you could do and a lot of other fractions you could pick. Okay, 2/3. Now I'm going to divide this into as many rows as I want. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to draw 2 lines. 1, 2. Okay. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 total pieces. And I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces shaded in. Okay, so 2/3 is the same as 6/9. So now I'm going to write the number sentence. Okay, so I'm going to say 2/3 is equal to 6/9. And I can write this as unit fractions first. So 2/3 is equal to 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9 plus 1/9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So now I can say 2/3 is the same as 6 copies of 1/9. Okay? Again, this is just one example. You could have done a lot of other fractions and a lot of other equivalent fractions. So let me know which ones you did, and if you did it more than one way, what are the fractions and equivalent fractions that you created? Okay? That's all for today. Check back in later for the week 5 videos, and I will see you then. Bye.